The fortress world of Talgren IV stood at the edge of known space, a massive military installation carved into gray stone and reinforced with energy shields that glowed faintly blue against the darkness. For 3 years, the Galactic Coalition had fought the Vrelthian swarm here, and for 3 years the fortress had held. Barely. Commander Hyojin walked through the command center with her 4 arms clasped behind her back. Her crystalline skin reflected the light from dozens of holographic displays that showed troop movements, supply lines, and casualty reports. She was Talrosian, a species known throughout the galaxy for their military prowess and strategic genius. Her people had been warriors when most other species were still living in caves. Or so she believed. The southern sector had nearly fallen yesterday. A massive breach in the defensive wall had let thousands of Vrelthian soldiers pour through. The swarm were insect-like creatures that moved in perfect coordination, overwhelming enemies with sheer numbers and brutal efficiency. They felt no fear, showed no mercy, and never retreated. Fighting them was like trying to stop an ocean with your bare hands. But the southern sector had held. One soldier had stood in that breach for 6 hours alone, until reinforcements finally arrived. That soldier wore heavy combat armor painted in dark gray, a helmet that completely covered his face and carried weapons that seemed too large for his frame. His name was Daewon, and he was human. Hyojin did not understand humans. They had only joined the Galactic Coalition 15 years ago, newcomers to a galaxy that had been exploring space for thousands of years. They were weak by galactic standards, no natural armor, no claws, no venom, no redundant organs. They lived short lives, barely a century if they were lucky. Their homeworld had been classified as a death world by the survey teams, but Hyojin thought that was exaggerated. Every world seemed dangerous to survey teams. The humans compensated for their weakness with technology. They built armor that enhanced their strength, weapons that made up for their lack of natural defenses, and medical systems that kept their fragile bodies alive. It was clever, Hyojin thought, but it was still compensation. Without their machines, humans would be helpless. She reviewed the battle footage from yesterday again. The cameras showed Daewon standing in the breach, a narrow gap in the wall about 10 meters wide. Vrelthian soldiers poured toward him in waves, their razor-sharp limbs glinting in the emergency lights. Daewon fired his weapon steadily, each shot dropping one of the creatures. When they got close, he used his armored fists and a vibro blade that hummed with energy. The footage showed 6 hours of continuous fighting. Other soldiers tried to reach him, but the swarm pushed them back. Daewon stood alone, surrounded by the bodies of enemies, and he did not move from that spot. When reinforcements finally broke through, they found him still standing, his armor covered in acid burns and claw marks, but the breach sealed by corpses. Hyojin had recommended him for a medal. It was deserved, she admitted, but she wondered how many other species could have done the same thing with that armor. She suspected most coalition soldiers could have held that position if they had human technology. In the barracks, Daewon sat on his bunk and cleaned his weapons. He had removed his helmet, revealing a face that other humans might call ordinary. Dark hair, dark eyes, a few scars on his cheek and forehead. He was 32 years old, which was young by galactic standards but middle-aged for a human. He had been fighting for 14 of those years. Other soldiers avoided him, not out of dislike but out of uncertainty. The other humans in the unit were friendly enough, but Daewon kept to himself. He did his job, followed orders, and spoke only when necessary. The alien soldiers found him unsettling. There was something about the way he moved, the way he watched, that made them uncomfortable. They could not explain it, so they simply kept their distance. A Krell soldier named Bora approached him. The Krell were large reptilian beings with thick scales and powerful tails. Bora was 7 feet tall and weighed over 400 pounds. He was considered small for his species. Daewon, Bora said, his voice rumbling. The commander wants to see you. Daewon looked up, nodded, and stood. He was 5 feet 10 inches tall, average for a human, which made him small compared to most galactic species. He followed Bora through the fortress corridors without speaking. They passed other soldiers from a dozen different species. Some nodded respectfully. Others whispered as he passed. Everyone knew about the southern sector. Everyone knew the human had held the line alone. Commander Hyojin's office was spacious, with windows that looked out over the fortress walls. In the distance, the no-man's land between the fortress and the swarm territory stretched for miles, a scarred landscape of craters and destroyed equipment. Soldier Day 1, Hyojin said without looking at him. She was reviewing reports on her desk display. Your actions yesterday were exemplary. You saved hundreds of lives. I did my job, Day 1 replied. His voice was quiet, neither proud nor humble. Simply factual. Your job was to hold the line until reinforcements arrived, Hyojin said. You exceeded expectations. I have recommended you for the Silver Star of Valor. The ceremony will be in 3 days. Day 1 said nothing. Hyojin finally looked at him, studying his face. Human expressions were difficult for her to read. They used so many subtle muscle movements to convey emotion. Right now, Day 1's face showed nothing at all. You may speak freely, Hyojin said. I have nothing to say. Commander. Most soldiers would be pleased to receive such an honor. I am pleased, Commander. Thank you. Hyojin dismissed him with a wave of one hand. Day 1 saluted and left. Bora, who had waited outside, fell into step beside him. You should be proud, Bora said. The Silver Star is a high honor. I am proud, Day 1 said. You do not show it. My people show pride differently. They walked in silence for a while. Finally, Bora asked the question that had been bothering him since yesterday. How did you hold that breach for so long? I saw the footage. There were thousands of them. Day 1 stopped walking and looked at Bora. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something old and tired. Then it was gone. I simply did not let them through, he said. It was not an answer, but Bora knew it was all he would get. He watched Day 1 walk away, back straight, steps even and measured. There was something about the human that Bora could not quite understand. Something that went beyond the armor and weapons. But he could not name it, so he dismissed the feeling and returned to his duties. In 3 days, there would be a ceremony. Medals would be given. Speeches would be made. And something would happen that would change everything, though no one knew it yet. The fortress continued its watch over the darkness, and in the southern sector, engineers worked to repair the breach. They found the remains of over 3,000 Vrelthian soldiers in and around that narrow gap. 3,000 enemies stopped by one soldier. The engineers wondered how it was possible. They checked the humans' armor logs and found something strange. The armor's enhancement systems had been operating at minimal levels. The targeting computer had barely been used. The medical system showed damage that should have incapacitated the wearer. They reported their findings to their supervisor, who dismissed it as a technical glitch. After all, no one could fight like that without their armor's help. It was impossible. But the data remained, quietly waiting in the system, a truth that no one wanted to see. 3 days passed quickly on Talgrin 4. The fortress prepared for the medal ceremony, with the kind of efficiency that came from years of military discipline. Banners were hung in the main hall, representing all the species that served in the Galactic Coalition. Soldiers polished their armor and dress uniforms. For a brief moment, the war seemed distant. The ceremony hall was enormous, capable of holding 5,000 soldiers. Today it was full. Representatives from every unit on Talgrin IV had gathered to witness the honors. The wounded who could walk attended in person. Those who could not watched from the medical bay through holographic projection. Day 1 stood in formation with the other soldiers being decorated. There were 12 of them in total. A Krell who had destroyed an enemy artillery position. A Velthram pilot who had shot down 40 enemy craft. A Talrosian squad leader who had coordinated a perfect defensive formation. Each had done something remarkable. Each deserved recognition. Day 1 wore his dress uniform, which was simpler than most species. Humans did not have elaborate ceremonial armor or traditional weapons to display, just a dark blue uniform with rank insignia and unit patches. His face was clean-shaven, his hair cut short in military fashion. He stood at attention, hands behind his back, eyes forward. Commander Hyojin walked onto the stage, her crystalline skin catching the light and scattering it in patterns across the walls. She was wearing full ceremonial armor, polished until it gleamed. Behind her walked General Taemin, the overall commander of Talgrin IV, and several other high-ranking officers from different species. The ceremony began with traditional words of honor. Each soldier stepped forward when their name was called. Hyojin placed the medal around their neck and spoke briefly about their achievement. The hall erupted in applause after each one. It was a good ceremony, proper and dignified. Then Hyojin called Day 1's name. He stepped forward and saluted. Hyojin held the Silver Star of Valor in one of her 4 hands. It was a beautiful medal, shaped like an 8-pointed star made of silver and blue crystal. Only 63 had been awarded in the entire war. Soldier Day 1, Hyojin began. You held the southern breach for 6 hours against impossible odds. Your actions saved hundreds of lives and prevented the fortress from being overrun. Day 1 said nothing. He simply stood at attention, waiting. Hyojin placed the medal around his neck. Then she continued speaking, and her tone changed slightly. Your achievement is impressive, she said, particularly for a human. I have reviewed the battle footage extensively. Your armor performed admirably. There was something in the way she emphasized armor that made several officers in the audience shift uncomfortably. It makes one wonder, Hyojin continued, how much of your success was due to your skill, and how much was due to your equipment. Humans are, after all, a physically weak species. Without your armor, your targeting systems, your medical support, you would be helpless in combat. The hall had gone silent. Soldiers exchanged glances. This was not normal ceremony speech. Your species compensates for its weakness with technology, Hyojin said. You hide inside shells of metal and plastic, letting machines do what your bodies cannot. It is clever, I suppose, but it raises questions about true strength versus borrowed strength. Day 1's expression did not change. He stood perfectly still, looking straight ahead. I believe, Hyojin said, that any coalition soldier could have held that breach with the same equipment. Your armor held the line, not you. The machines fought, not the man inside them. She looked at Day 1, waiting for a response. He gave none. Do you have anything to say? She asked. No, Commander, Day 1 replied quietly. Nothing to defend your achievement? The achievement speaks for itself, Commander. Hyojin's crystalline features hardened. Yes, it does. It speaks of humans hiding behind technology, using machines to pretend they are warriors. Every other species in this coalition has earned their place through natural strength. Krell have their size and power. Talrosians have our strategic minds and combat training. Felthrim have their speed and coordination. What do humans have without their machines? Soft skin, weak bones, short lives. General Taeman stepped forward, clearly intending to stop this, but Hyojin held up one hand. I mean no disrespect, she said, though her words clearly meant exactly that. I simply speak truth. Humans are the newest and weakest species in the coalition. You contribute, yes, but you contribute through technology, not through any inherent quality. Take away your armor and your weapons, and what remains? The human soldiers in the audience stood frozen. Several alien soldiers looked uncomfortable. Others nodded slightly, agreeing with Hyojin's assessment. Day 1 remained at attention, the medal hanging around his neck. His face showed nothing. Not anger, not shame, not hurt. Nothing at all. You may return to formation, Hyojin finally said. Day 1 saluted, turned precisely, and walked back to his place in line. The ceremony continued, but the mood had changed. The remaining medals were awarded quickly. The speeches were shorter. Everyone wanted the ceremony to end. When it finally did, the soldiers filed out of the hall in silence. The human soldiers walked together, their faces carefully neutral. The alien soldiers avoided looking at them. In the human barracks, 23 human soldiers gathered in the common area. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, someone spoke. That was wrong, said a woman named Young Mi. She was a medic, skilled and respected. What she said was wrong. She believes it, said another soldier, a man named Kiwan. You heard the others agreeing with her. They think we are weak. We should report this, Young Mi said. That was public humiliation. That was prejudice. Report it to who? Kiwan asked. She is the commander. General Taeman was standing right there and did nothing. They argued quietly, their voices controlled. No one raised their voice. No one made threats. But the anger was there, simmering beneath the surface. Day 1 was not among them. He had returned to his personal quarters immediately after the ceremony. He sat on his bunk, still wearing his dress uniform, the medal still around his neck. He stared at the wall, thinking. Bora found him there an hour later. The Krell knocked on the doorframe and entered when Day 1 acknowledged him. That was wrong, Bora said immediately. What she said was wrong. Everyone knows it. Does everyone know it? Day 1 asked quietly. Bora hesitated. Many do. But many agree with her. Some, yes. But not all. Not most. Day 1 looked at the medal around his neck. He carefully removed it and set it on the small table beside his bunk. It does not matter, he said. She has made her position clear. I understand now how humans are viewed here. One officer's opinion does not represent everyone, Bora argued. She felt comfortable saying it publicly. Daewon replied. That means others share her view. They just do not say it out loud. Bora had no response to that. He stood awkwardly for a moment, then left. Daewon continued sitting, staring at nothing. That night he did not sleep. He sat in the darkness of his quarters and thought about the last 14 years. He thought about all the battles he had fought, all the wounds he had taken, all the enemies he had killed. He thought about what Commander Hyojin had said, and he made a decision. The next morning, Daewon walked to the administration office. He carried a data pad with a formal request. The officer on duty, a Veltrim named Ji-Hai, looked at the request and her eyes widened. Immediate discharge? She asked. Are you certain? Yes, Daewon said. You have 4 years remaining on your contract. I am invoking Clause 17, Daewon said. Discharge for untenable service conditions. I have served with distinction. I have the right to request early separation. Ji-Hai looked at him, then at the request. She knew what had happened at the ceremony. Everyone knew. I will process this, she said quietly. It will take 3 days. Thank you, Daewon said. He left the office. Ji-Hai watched him go, then looked at the request again. She wondered if others would follow. She did not have to wonder long. By the end of the day, 7 more humans had submitted discharge requests. The 3 days passed like a slow countdown. Daewon continued his duties as usual, attending briefings, standing watch, maintaining his equipment. He spoke to no one about his decision. The other humans who had requested discharge did the same. They simply went about their work quietly, waiting. Commander Hyojin learned about the discharge request on the 2nd day. She called Bora to her office. As Daewon's direct superior, he would have to explain this. Why are they leaving? She demanded. Bora stood at attention, his massive frame rigid. They have invoked their right to discharge under Clause 17, Commander. I know what clause they invoked, Hyojin said, her voice sharp. I asked why. Untenable service conditions, Commander. What conditions? They have the same quarters as everyone else, the same food, the same pay. What is untenable? Bora said nothing. He simply looked at her with his reptilian eyes. And in that look was an answer she did not want to hear. This is about the ceremony, she said flatly. I cannot speak for their reasons. Commander, they are being oversensitive, Hyojin said. I spoke truth. If they cannot handle truth, they should not be soldiers. Bora remained silent. After a moment, Hyojin dismissed him with an irritated wave. On the 3rd day, Daewon's discharge was approved. He received notification at 800 hours. By 1,000 hours, he was to clear his quarters and turn in all coalition equipment. He had been granted permission to keep his personal belongings and 1 transport ticket to any coalition world of his choosing. He chose Earth. Word spread quickly through the fortress. The human who held the southern breach was leaving. Soldiers began gathering outside the armory where Daewon was required to turn in his gear. They did not plan to gather. They simply showed up, drawn by curiosity or respect or something they could not name. Daewon arrived at the armory at 0930 hours. He wore simple gray fatigues with no rank insignia. He carried a small bag with his personal items. Behind him, 2 junior soldiers pushed a cart with his armor. The armory sergeant, a 4-armed Talrosian named Sang-Ho, looked uncomfortable as Daewon approached. I need to process your equipment return, Sang-Ho said. I understand, Daewon replied. The armor first, Sang-Ho said. Standard procedure requires you to remove it piece by piece for inspection. This was normal procedure. Every soldier who left the service had to turn in their equipment, and armor was expensive. Each piece needed to be cataloged and checked for damage. What was not normal was the crowd that had gathered. Over 100 soldiers from different species stood in the armory bay watching. They had never seen a human remove their armor before. Humans always wore it on duty. In the barracks, they might remove the helmet, but the armor itself was rarely fully removed in public. Daewon began with the helmet. He placed it on the inspection table. It was scarred from acid and claw marks, the visor cracked on one side. Sang-Ho cataloged it and set it aside. The chest plate came next. Daewon unlatched it and lifted it over his head. Underneath, he wore only a thin black shirt. The alien soldiers leaned forward slightly, their curiosity evident. Without the armor, Daewon looked smaller. The chest plate had added bulk and protection. Now they could see his actual frame. He was lean, not heavily muscled like a Krell or broadly built like a Talrosian. His shoulders were narrow by galactic standards, his chest unimpressive. But then they noticed other things. Scars. Dozens of them. Old scars and new scars. Crisscrossing his arms and visible at his collar. Burns, cuts, punctures. Evidence of wounds that would have killed most species. Evidence of a body that had survived things it should not have. The arm guards came off next, revealing more scars. A Velthram soldier near the front of the crowd made a small sound of surprise. One of Daewon's forearms showed the mark of a Vrelthian claw strike, a wound that should have severed the limb. Yet the arm was functional, the muscles moving normally as Daewon continued removing armor pieces. The leg plates followed. More scars. A burn mark that covered most of his left thigh. Puncture scars on his right calf that looked like they had gone completely through the leg. With each piece of armor removed, the alien soldiers grew quieter. They had expected something weak and soft. What they saw was something else entirely. Not massive strength like a Krell, not armored hide like a Velthram, but something that disturbed them in a way they could not articulate. Daewon stood in just his fatigues, all the armor removed. He was 5 feet 10 inches of scarred flesh and quiet strength. He moved to collect his personal bag, and every soldier in the armory noticed how he moved. Without armor, he was faster. His steps were completely silent on the metal floor. His balance was perfect, weight distributed like a predator. The armor had been hiding his movement, masking something that the alien soldiers now saw clearly. He moved like nothing they had ever seen. Not the heavy power of a Krell, not the quick darting of a Velthram. Something else. Something smooth and efficient and deeply, fundamentally wrong to their instincts. A young Talrosian soldier standing near the door felt her skin prickle with unease. She was a warrior, trained from birth to fight. She had fought Vrelthian soldiers without fear. But watching this human walk past her, she felt something she had never felt in combat. She felt like prey. The feeling passed quickly. Daewon was not threatening anyone. He was simply walking. But the feeling had been there, instinctive and undeniable. Bora stepped forward from the crowd. "Daewon," he said. Daewon stopped and turned to face him. "You do not have to do this," Bora said. "I have spoken to General Taemin. He is willing to transfer you to a different unit away from Commander Hyojin." "No," Daewon said simply. "You are a good soldier. We need you." "You need what I can do," Daewon corrected. "You do not need me. There is a difference. What will you do?" Bora asked. "Go home," Daewon said. "Return to Earth. Live quietly." "What about the war?" Daewon looked at Bora for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but clear enough for everyone in the armory to hear. "The war will continue with or without me," he said. "I held the line because it was my duty. But I will not serve where I am not respected. I will not fight for those who call me weak and claim my achievements belong to machines." He looked around the armory at all the soldiers watching him. "I came to this war because I believed the coalition was worth fighting for," he said. "I believed that different species could work together, respect each other, protect each other. I was wrong. Or perhaps I was right, but there are those who do not share that belief." He paused, then added, "I do not need armor to be strong. I do not need machines to be a warrior. My people were warriors long before we reached the stars. We fought and survived on a world that tried to kill us every day. We became what we needed to become. The armor was never for our protection. It was to make others comfortable around us." The silence in the armory was absolute. No one moved. No one spoke. Daewon picked up his bag and walked toward the door. The crowd parted for him automatically, soldiers stepping aside without thinking. He walked through them like a ghost, present but untouchable. At the door, he stopped and looked back at the armor standing on its inspection rack. All the pieces laid out empty and harmless. "Take care of it," he said to Sang-ho. "Someone else will need it." Then he walked out of the armory. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. For a full minute, no one in the armory spoke. They all stood looking at the empty armor, each thinking their own thoughts. Finally, Bora broke the silence. "Return to your duties," he ordered. The soldiers dispersed slowly, reluctantly. But they could not stop thinking about what they had seen. The scars, the movement, the quiet way the human had spoken, with no anger, no bitterness. Just statement of fact, and somewhere in the back of each mind was a question that disturbed them. If that was what a human looked like beneath the armor, what else had they misunderstood about this species? Daewon walked to the departure terminal alone. His transport would leave in 4 hours. He sat in the waiting area with his single bag, watching ships come and go through the viewports. Other humans found him there. Young Mi, Ki-Wan, and 3 others whose discharges had been approved. They sat with him in silence, waiting for their own transports. "Where will you go?" Young Mi asked. "Home," Daewon said. "You?" "Home," she replied. "I am done with this war." They sat together, 6 humans who had decided that some fights were not worth fighting. Not because they were too hard, but because they were not respected. Outside the viewport, Talgrin IV continued its lonely watch over the dark. Inside the fortress, soldiers returned to their duties. And in the southern sector, the breach that Daewon had held remained quiet, for now. The southern sector fell on the 5th day after Daewon left. It started at dawn. The Vrelthian swarm launched a coordinated assault across 3 points in the defensive perimeter, but their main force concentrated on the southern breach. The same breach that Daewon had held alone for 6 hours. The same breach that had been repaired and reinforced with additional automated turrets and shield generators. 4 coalition soldiers were assigned to hold the position. 2 Krell heavy infantry, 1 Talrosian tactical officer, and 1 Velthrim fast response specialist. They had better equipment than Daewon had used. They had supporting fire from artillery positions. They had backup troops ready to assist within minutes. They lasted 47 minutes. The Vrelthian forces came in the same endless waves, thousands of insect-like creatures with razor claws and acid blood. The coalition soldiers fought well. They followed their training, used their superior firepower, coordinated their defense perfectly. But there were too many enemies. The Krell soldier's armor was breached by acid. The Talrosian officer was overwhelmed when her position was flanked. The Velthrim soldier retreated to call for reinforcements and was cut down before reaching the communication post. The swarm poured through the breach like water through a broken dam. They spread into the southern sector, killing everything in their path. The coalition forces fell back in disorder, trying to establish a new defensive line. The retreat became a rout. By noon, the entire southern sector was in enemy hands. 2,000 coalition soldiers were dead or missing. The fortress had lost 1/5 of its defensive perimeter. General Tai Min stood in the command center, watching holographic displays show red enemy markers spreading across the map like a disease. His expression was grim. "How did this happen?" he asked quietly. "They overwhelmed the position, sir," an aide replied. "The same tactic they used 5 days ago." 5 days ago, 1 soldier held that position for 6 hours, Taman said. Today, 4 soldiers with better equipment lasted less than 1 hour. Explain that, no one could. The silence in the command center was heavy with unspoken thoughts. Commander Hyojin was not present. She was in the southern sector, trying to organize a counterattack to retake the lost ground. But even she knew it was hopeless. The swarm had established themselves too firmly. It would take weeks to push them out, and thousands more lives would be lost. In the human barracks, the remaining 17 human soldiers watched the news reports in silence. They had not been assigned to the southern sector. After Daewon and the others left, General Taimin had quietly moved all remaining humans to different positions. "They cannot hold without us," Kite said. He was a young soldier, only 23, but he had fought in a dozen battles. "They think they can, but they cannot." "It is not our problem anymore," Young Sik replied. He was older, 38, with graying hair. "We offered to help. They called us weak. Now they can solve their own problems. People are dying," Kite said. "People have always been dying," Young Sik said. "That is what happens in war. We did not start this war. We do not have to finish it." More human soldiers began requesting transfers. Some asked to leave Talgrin IV entirely. Others requested assignment to positions far from Commander Hyojin's chain of command. General Taman approved every request without question. By the end of the first week after Daewon's departure, only 8 humans remained on Talgrin IV. By the end of the second week, only 3. The fortress struggled to adjust. Human soldiers had made up only 3% of the coalition forces on Talgrin IV, but their absence created holes in the defense that no one had anticipated. Positions that humans had held were now manned by other species, but the casualty rates increased. The pattern was noticed by the Coalition High Command. A Velthram analyst named Tai Yang began compiling data from fortresses across the war zone. He found the same pattern everywhere. Where humans withdrew, defensive effectiveness decreased, casualty rates increased, ground was lost. He presented his findings to his superior, who dismissed them. Correlation is not causation, the superior said. Just because humans left and performance decreased does not mean one caused the other. Perhaps the swarm simply became more aggressive, but Taeyang was not convinced. He dug deeper into the data, analyzing battle reports, reviewing combat footage, interviewing soldiers who had fought alongside humans. What he found disturbed him. Humans fought differently than other species. They did not rely on natural advantages like size or armor or speed. They used tactics, creativity, and something else that Taeyang struggled to define. They seemed to understand violence in a way other species did not. A Krell soldier told him, "Humans fight like the universe is trying to kill them." Because for them it was. A Talrosian officer said, "They do not wait for orders. They see what needs to be done and do it, sometimes before we even realize it needs to be done." A Velthram medic said, "I have treated human soldiers for wounds that would kill any of us. They keep fighting anyway. I do not understand how." Taeyang compiled everything into a detailed report. He titled it the Human Combat Effectiveness Factor. He sent it to General Taemin, Commander Hyojin, and the Coalition High Command. General Taemin read it immediately. He sat in his office long into the night, reading the report 3 times. Each time his expression grew more troubled. Commander Hyojin read it and threw her datapad across her office. "This is ridiculous," she said to her aide. "This report claims humans are superior fighters. It is propaganda, nothing more." "The data comes from our own systems, Commander," the aide said carefully. "The analyst simply compiled it. Then the analyst has an agenda," Hyojin snapped. "Humans are weak. I have seen their biology reports. They have no natural weapons, no armor, short lifespans, fragile bodies. These facts do not change because some analyst wants them to." "Commander, the southern sector fell because the soldiers there failed to do their duty properly," Hyojin interrupted. "Not because a human left. One soldier, no matter how well equipped, does not determine the outcome of battles." But even as she said it, she felt doubt creeping in. One soldier had held that breach for 6 hours. 4 soldiers with better equipment had held it for less than 1 hour. The math did not work unless there was something she was missing. She pushed the doubt away angrily. She was Talrosian. Her people had been warriors for thousands of years. They understood combat. They understood strength. And strength did not come from soft, weak, short-lived creatures who needed machines to survive. On Earth, Daewon sat in a small apartment in Seoul. He had been home for 2 weeks. He spent his days walking in the mountains, eating food he had not tasted in years, sleeping without the sound of alarms. He tried not to think about the war. He tried not to think about Talgren IV. But news reached him anyway. The southern sector had fallen. More humans were leaving coalition service. The war was going badly. His old commander from before he joined the coalition called him. "I heard what happened," Commander Park said. "I am sorry." "It is done," Daewon replied. "The coalition has sent recruitment requests," Park said. "They want more humans. They are offering better pay, better conditions." "Are people accepting?" "No," Park said. "Word has spread about what happened to you, about what that commander said. People are angry. They should not be angry on my behalf," Daewon said. "It is not just for you," Park said. "It is the principle. We offered our help. We fought their war. We died for their cause, and they called us weak, called our achievements the work of machines. People do not forget insults like that." Daewon said nothing. Commander Park sighed. "What will you do now?" Park asked. "Live quietly," Daewon said. "I have fought enough." "The galaxy may not let you," Park said. "This war is not over. The galaxy will have to manage without me," Daewon replied. He ended the call and looked out his window at the city. Seoul at night was beautiful, all lights and movement and life, so different from Talgren IV with its gray stone and endless darkness. He had made his choice. He was done with the war, done with the coalition, done with fighting for people who did not respect him. But in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that the war might not be done with him. That sometimes you could not simply walk away from things, that some fights found you whether you wanted them or not. He ignored the voice. He had earned his peace and he intended to keep it. On Talgrin 4, the fortress struggled on. The swarm tested their defenses daily, probing for weakness. The coalition soldiers fought bravely, but the absence of humans was felt in ways both large and small. And Commander Hyojin stood on the walls of her fortress, looking out at the darkness and wondered why victory seemed further away than ever. Tae-yang could not let it go. The Velthrim analyst sat in his small office, surrounded by data screens, reviewing combat footage for the 100th time. He had been told to drop his investigation. His superior had made it clear that the human question was not a priority. But Tae-yang could not stop thinking about the numbers. The numbers did not lie. In every sector where humans had served, combat effectiveness was higher. Casualty rates were lower. Ground was held more successfully. When humans left, all those metrics went in the wrong direction. But why? That was the question that kept Tae-yang awake at night. What were humans doing that other species could not replicate? He started with Day 1, the human who held the southern breach. Tae-yang pulled every piece of data on that battle: helmet camera footage, armor system logs, enemy movement patterns, everything. The footage showed 6 hours of continuous combat. Tae-yang watched it in real time, all 6 hours, making notes. What he saw confused him. Day 1's movements were efficient but not superhuman. He aimed his weapon carefully, fired in controlled bursts, conserved ammunition. When enemies got close, he used his vibroblade and armored fists. Nothing unusual. Nothing that explained how one soldier could do what 4 others could not. Then Tae-yang looked at the armor system logs. That was when things became strange. The targeting computer had barely been used. The armor specifications showed an advanced targeting system that could lock onto multiple enemies, predict movement patterns, and optimize firing solutions. Day 1 had used it less than 5% of the time. He had been aiming manually. The power assist servos had operated at minimal capacity. The armor was designed to enhance strength, letting a soldier hit harder and move heavy objects. The logs showed the servos functioning at only 20% capacity. Day 1 had been relying mostly on his own muscles. Most disturbing were the medical system logs. The armor contained sophisticated medical systems that could inject painkillers, seal wounds, and keep a soldier fighting through injuries that would normally incapacitate them. The log showed dozens of injuries during that 6-hour battle: acid burns, claw punctures, impact trauma. The medical system had administered painkillers 3 times. Only 3 times in 6 hours. That meant Day 1 had been fighting through pain that would have rendered most soldiers unconscious. Fighting through injuries that should have stopped him. Tae-yang sat back in his chair thinking. The evidence pointed to one conclusion: Day 1 had not needed his armor. He had fought effectively without using most of its capabilities. But that was impossible. Humans were weak. Everyone knew that, unless everyone was wrong. Tae-yang began researching human biology. He accessed the Coalition Xenobiology database and pulled up the survey reports from Earth. What he read made him increasingly uncomfortable. Earth was classified as a Class 9, Death World. Only 3 other known planets in the Coalition held that classification. It meant Earth was extraordinarily hostile to life. The survey report listed the dangers: extreme weather, dangerous predators, toxic plants, diseases, parasites, natural disasters. Humans had evolved on a world that was actively trying to kill them. Tae-yang dug deeper. He learned about human evolution, about how humans had survived by becoming endurance hunters, chasing prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion, about how human bodies were designed to lose heat efficiently, allowing them to run for hours in conditions that would kill other predators. He learned about adrenaline, a chemical human bodies produce that temporarily increased strength, speed, and pain tolerance, about how humans could function with injuries that would be fatal to most species, their bodies having redundant systems and high pain thresholds. He learned about human warfare, about how humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years before reaching space, about weapons and tactics and strategies developed over millennia of constant conflict. The more he learned, the more disturbed he became. Humans were not weak. They had never been weak. They had simply appeared weak compared to species with natural armor or size or speed. But weakness and lack of natural weapons were not the same thing. A human was like a blade without a handle. Dangerous, but requiring careful use. The armor was the handle. It made humans safer for others to work with, not safer for the human. Tae-yang compiled his findings into a new report. This one was much longer than his first, filled with biological data, evolutionary history, and combat analysis. He titled it, Understanding Human Combat Effectiveness, an Evolutionary Perspective. He sent it to General Taemin first, then to Commander Hyojin. Then he waited. General Taemin read the report in his office late at night. His aide had left for the day. The fortress was quiet except for the distant sounds of patrols and machinery. As he read, Taemin felt a growing sense of unease. He had fought in wars for 40 years. He thought he understood combat. But this report suggested he had misunderstood an entire species. The section on human evolution particularly troubled him. Humans had evolved as pursuit predators on a death world. They had survived by outlasting their prey, by refusing to give up, by pushing through pain and exhaustion. Those traits did not disappear when humans reached space. They were fundamental to what humans were, and the coalition had called them weak, had dismissed their achievements as the work of machines, had insulted a species of natural-born survivors who had climbed to the top of their food chain through sheer determination. Taemin thought about Daewon standing in the armory, removing his armor piece by piece. He thought about the scars. He thought about what Daewon had said. The armor was never for our protection. It was to make others comfortable around us. He had thought that was bravado. Now he wondered if it was simple truth. Commander Hyojin read the report in her office the next morning. She read it quickly at first, then slower, then read it again. Her crystalline features hardened as she read. "This is speculation," she said to Lieutenant Minseo, who stood at attention before her desk. "Evolutionary theory and historical data do not prove combat effectiveness." "Commander, the battle data supports the analysis," Minseo said carefully. "Human soldiers consistently outperform projections. The southern breach was held by one soldier with excellent equipment," Hyojin interrupted. "Stop attributing it to some inherent human superiority. That is what this report wants us to believe, that humans are somehow special. The report does not claim superiority," Minseo said. "It simply suggests that human combat effectiveness has been underestimated, that their evolution on a death world produced traits that make them exceptionally suited for ground combat. Every species thinks they are special," Hyojin said. "Humans are no different. They want us to believe they are warriors by nature, but I have seen their biology reports. Soft skin, no natural weapons, short lives. These are facts. Commander, respectfully, those facts may not tell the complete story." Hyojin stood abruptly, her forearms gesturing sharply. "I will not accept that humans are superior to Talrosians in combat. My people have been warriors for 5,000 years. We have perfected the art of war. Humans are children playing with weapons their technology allows them to use. Without their machines, they would be helpless." Minseo said nothing. He had said enough. He could see that Commander Hyojin had made up her mind, and no amount of data would change it. But doubt had been planted, whether Hyojin acknowledged it or not. The southern sector remained lost. More ground was lost each week. Human soldiers continued to leave coalition service. The war was going badly, and everyone knew it. Tae-yang continued his research. He reached out to soldiers who had served with humans, conducting interviews, gathering stories. Each interview added another piece to the puzzle. A Krell sergeant told him about a human soldier named Jin Ho who had carried a wounded Krell to safety. The Krell weighed 400 pounds. Jin Ho was half that weight, but he had carried his comrade 3 kilometers through enemy territory, refusing to leave him behind. A Velthram pilot told him about a human named Su-jin, who had survived a shuttle crash that killed everyone else aboard. She had walked 15 kilometers through hostile terrain with a broken leg and reached the base in time to warn them of an incoming attack. A Talrosian medical officer told him about treating human soldiers, about how they healed from wounds that should have been fatal, about how they refused to stay in medical bay, insisting on returning to duty before they were fully recovered. Every story was the same. Humans pushing beyond what should be possible. Humans refusing to quit. Humans surviving things that killed other species. Tae-yang compiled these stories into a third report. He sent it to General Taemin with a simple note. "We misunderstood them. We need them back." and we may have lost them forever. General Taman read the new report and made a decision. He sent a message to Coalition High Command. In it, he explained the situation on Talgrin IV. He explained the loss of human soldiers. He explained the decrease in defensive effectiveness. He ended the message with a recommendation. Formally apologize to human forces. Offer full acknowledgement of their contributions. Request their return with appropriate respect and compensation. If we do not do this, we will lose this war. The message was received, reviewed, and forwarded up the chain of command. It would take weeks to get a response. In the meantime, Talgrin IV continued to struggle. And on Earth the swarm came at dawn, as they always did. But this time was different. This time they came with everything they had. Alert sirens wailed across Talgrin IV as sensors detected the approaching force. In the command center, officers stared at holographic displays showing thousands of red markers converging on the fortress from all directions. The largest concentration targeted the southern sector. The sector that had already fallen once. How many? General Taman asked, though he could see the numbers himself. Estimated 200,000, an aide replied. All major swarm units. This is their final push, sir. Taman nodded slowly. He had known this was coming. The swarm had been gathering forces for weeks, pulling back from other sectors to concentrate here. They had chosen Talgrin IV as the place to break the coalition's defensive line. If the fortress fell, 3 entire systems would be exposed. Sound general quarters, he ordered. All units to defensive positions. Activate all automated systems. Request reinforcements from High Command. Reinforcements will take 6 hours to arrive, sir, the aide said. Then we hold for 6 hours, Taman replied. But he wondered if they could. The fortress had lost ground steadily since the southern sector fell. Morale was low. Casualties were mounting. And they had no human soldiers left. The last 3 had transferred out 10 days ago. Commander Hyojin stood on the southern wall watching the horizon. In the distance, she could see the swarm approaching, a dark mass that covered the ground like a living carpet. She had seen many attacks before, but never one this large. Commander, Lieutenant Min Seo said, approaching her. General Taman orders you to fall back to the inner fortress. This position is indefensible. Everything is indefensible if we do not defend it, Hyojin replied. But even she could hear the hollowness in her words. The swarm hit the outer defenses at 0630 hours. Artillery fire tore through their ranks, but they kept coming. Automated turrets fired without pause. Barrels glowing red from heat. Energy shields flickered under the assault of thousands of bodies throwing themselves against the barriers. The southern breach fell in 20 minutes. The 4-soldier team assigned there lasted less than 15 minutes before calling for retreat. The swarm poured through, and this time there were no reserves close enough to stop them. By 0700, the swarm controlled the entire southern sector again. By 0800, they had pushed into the eastern sector. Coalition forces fell back in fighting retreat, trying to maintain order, but the sheer numbers were overwhelming. General Taman made the hard decision. Evacuate all non-essential personnel, he ordered. Priority to wounded and civilians. Military personnel will hold as long as possible. The evacuation began. Shuttles launched from the fortress's landing bays, carrying the wounded and the few civilians who worked in support roles. The military personnel stayed behind, knowing many would not survive the next 6 hours. In the command center, Taeyang monitored the battle data with growing horror. Every projection showed the fortress falling within 3 hours. Even if reinforcements arrived on time, they would find nothing but ruins and bodies. He thought about his reports, about everything he had learned about humans, about how 1 human soldier had held the southern breach for 6 hours, while 4 non-human soldiers could barely hold it for 20 minutes. He made a decision that would probably cost him his career. He accessed the Coalition emergency broadcast system and sent a message to Earth. Not an official request, not a formal communication, just a simple message. Talgrin IV is falling. 200,000 civilians and soldiers will die in the next 3 hours. We disrespected you. We called you weak. We were wrong. If any humans are willing to help, we need you now. Not for glory, not for the Coalition, but because people are dying, and we cannot save them alone. He did not know if anyone would receive the message. He did not know if anyone would care. He sent it anyway and returned to monitoring the battle data. On Earth in Seoul, Daewon sat in his apartment drinking morning tea. His comm unit beeped with an incoming message. He ignored it at first. He had been ignoring most messages since returning home. But something made him check it. He read Taeyang's message once. Then again. He sat very still, the tea growing cold in his hand. 200,000 people. 3 hours. The fortress falling. He thought about Commander Hyojin, about the insult, about how he had been called weak, about how his achievements had been dismissed. He should not care. He had walked away. He had earned his peace. But 200,000 people were about to die. Daewon picked up his comm unit and made a call. Then another. Then another. Within 10 minutes, he had contacted 12 other human veterans. All of them had served on Talgren 4. All of them had left after the ceremony. I am going back, he told each one. Not to fight for the coalition. Not to prove anything. But because civilians are dying and they need help evacuating. He gave each person the choice. No pressure. No judgment. Just the facts and the question, will you help? 11 said yes immediately. 1 hesitated, then agreed. 12 humans, all veterans, all willing to return to the place that had disrespected them. Not for glory, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do, they chartered a fast transport. It would take 3 hours to reach Talgren IV. They might arrive in time. They might not. But they would try. Daewon and his small group wore no armor. They had turned in all coalition equipment when they left. They wore simple combat fatigues and carried basic weapons purchased from civilian suppliers. Nothing fancy, nothing military grade, just the tools they needed. The transport pilot, a human named Hyunwoo, pushed the engines to maximum. 3 hours, he said. That is cutting it close. It is what we have, Daewon replied. On Talgren 4, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The swarm had pushed into the fortress proper, fighting in the corridors and rooms. Coalition soldiers fought desperately, but they were being overwhelmed. The evacuation was behind schedule. Too many wounded. Too many civilians. Not enough shuttles. Commander Hyojin fought in the southern corridor, her 4 arms wielding weapons with practiced skill. She had abandoned the command post to fight alongside her soldiers. If the fortress was going to fall, she would fall with it. A swarm warrior lunged at her. She shot it, but 3 more took its place. Her armor was cracked in a dozen places. Her weapons were running low on ammunition. She fought on anyway because that was what warriors did. A claw caught her in the side, punching through armor and into flesh. She gasped in pain but kept fighting. Another claw struck her leg. She fell to one knee. This was it, she thought. This was how it ended. Then something moved past her, faster than she could track. A figure in simple fatigues carrying a basic rifle. The figure shot 3 swarm warriors in rapid succession, each shot perfectly placed. Then the figure turned and looked at her. It was Daewon. Can you walk? He asked. Hyojin stared at him in shock. What are you doing here? Helping evacuate, he replied. Can you walk? Yes, barely. Then fall back to the evacuation point, Daewon said. We will hold here. We? Hyojin asked. 11 more humans appeared, moving through the corridor with weapons ready. They wore no armor. They looked small and vulnerable compared to the armored coalition soldiers. But the way they moved, the way they positioned themselves, spoke of deadly competence. You came back, Hyojin whispered. Not for you, Daewon said quietly. Not for the coalition. But civilians need help, and that is what we do. He turned away from her and focused on the corridor ahead, where more swarm warriors were approaching. The 11 other humans spread out in a defensive line. They did not speak. They simply prepared to fight. Hyojin wanted to say something, wanted to apologize, to explain, to acknowledge what she had done wrong. But there was no time. The swarm was coming and she needed to reach the evacuation point. She limped away, looking back once to see the 12 humans standing in the corridor, unarmored and outnumbered, preparing to face thousands of enemies. She had called them weak. She had dismissed their achievements. She had been wrong about everything, and now they were saving her life. The swarm hit the human defensive line like a tsunami. The 12 humans opened fire with precise controlled bursts. No wasted ammunition, no panic. Just professional soldiers doing what they had been trained to do. But this time, without armor, everyone could see what humans really were. They moved with impossible speed, their bodies light and agile without the weight of combat gear. They dodged attacks that would have hit armored soldiers. They fought with an intensity that was frightening to watch. When the swarm warriors got close, the humans switched to close combat. No powered armor to enhance their strikes. No vibroblades humming with energy. Just knives and fists and savage efficiency, and they did not stop. Injuries that would have dropped other species barely slowed them down. They kept fighting, kept moving, kept holding the line. The evacuation continued behind them, shuttles launching one after another, carrying wounded and civilians to safety. The humans bought them time with blood and pain and stubborn refusal to retreat. 6 hours, Day One thought. I held this breach for 6 hours before. I can do it again. Behind him, his comrades fought with the same determination. They had come here knowing The 12 humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Without armor, they were faster than any coalition soldier. Their movements were fluid and precise, wasting no energy. They communicated with subtle gestures and brief glances, coordinating their defense without speaking. Coalition soldiers watching from the evacuation point stood in stunned silence. They had seen humans fight before, armored and equipped. But this was different. This was humans as they truly were, stripped of all pretense, showing the galaxy what millions of years of evolution on a death world had created. Day One fought at the center of the line. Blood ran down his left arm from a claw wound that had torn through muscle. His right leg burned with pain from an acid splash. He ignored both injuries and kept firing, kept moving, kept fighting. A swarm warrior broke through and lunged at him. Day One dropped his rifle, drew his knife, and sidestepped the attack with inches to spare. The blade found the creature's weak point behind its head. It fell dead. Day One retrieved his rifle and continued firing. To his left, young Mi fought with the same controlled intensity. She was a medic, trained to save lives, but right now she was a soldier holding the line. A claw caught her shoulder, cutting deep. She gasped in pain but did not fall. She shot the warrior that wounded her, then shot 2 more behind it. How much longer? Kiwan shouted from the right side of the line. Until the evacuation is complete, Day One replied. However long that takes. My ammunition is at 20%, someone called out. Make every shot count, Day One said calmly. We have held worse, they had. Every human on this line had survived battles that should have killed them. They had endured injuries that would have broken other species. This was what they were. This was what Earth had made them. In the command center, Taeyang watched the security footage with tears streaming down his face. He had written reports about human combat effectiveness. He had analyzed data and compiled statistics. But seeing it with his own eyes was different. 12 unarmored humans holding back thousands of enemies. 12 humans saving the fortress. 12 humans proving everything he had tried to explain in words that could not capture the reality. General Taemin stood beside him, equally transfixed. How are they doing this? He whispered. They are humans, sir, Taeyang replied. This is what they are. What they have always been. We just refuse to see it. The battle raged for 90 minutes. The 12 humans gave ground slowly, falling back meter by meter but never breaking. They fought as one unit, covering each other, supporting each other, refusing to let the line collapse. Behind them, the last shuttles loaded the remaining wounded and civilians. The evacuation was almost complete. Just a few more minutes, Day One took stock of his team. All 12 were injured, some badly. Jinsu had a broken arm. Haewon could barely stand on a leg that had been slashed by multiple claws. Minji's face was covered in blood from a head wound, but they were all still fighting. Still holding, because that was what humans did. They did not quit. They did not surrender. They endured. Last shuttle is loading, someone shouted from the evacuation point. 2 minutes. 2 minutes, Day One repeated to his team. We can do 2 minutes. The swarm seemed to sense the evacuation was ending. They pressed harder, throwing more warriors at the human line. The corridor became a killing ground, bodies piling up, making footing treacherous. Young Mi's rifle clicked empty. She had no more ammunition. She drew her knife and prepared to fight hand to hand. A swarm warrior charged her. She met it head on, ducking under its claws and driving her knife into its throat. Another warrior attacked from the side. She had no time to dodge. The claw was coming straight for her head. Then Day One was there, intercepting the attack with his own body. The claw tore across his back, ripping through his shirt and skin. He grunted in pain but stayed on his feet, killing the warrior with 3 precise shots. You are injured, Young Mi said. So are you, Day One replied. Keep fighting. Last shuttle is launching, came the shout. All personnel, fall back. Move, Daewon ordered his team. Fighting retreat. Everyone to the landing bay. The 12 humans fell back in perfect coordination, still firing, still holding the swarm at bay. They reached the landing bay where one shuttle waited, engines already warming up. Hyunwoo, the pilot who had brought them here, leaned out of the cockpit. Get in. Coalition reinforcements are 30 minutes out. We need to leave now. The humans scrambled aboard. Daewon was the last to enter, turning to fire one more burst down the corridor at the pursuing swarm. Then he pulled himself into the shuttle, and Hyunwoo lifted off immediately. The shuttle cleared the fortress just as the swarm overran the landing bay. Through the viewports, they could see the fortress below, almost completely lost to the enemy. But the evacuation was complete. Every civilian was safe. Every wounded soldier had been carried out. The reinforcement fleet arrived 30 minutes later, fresh coalition forces that would retake the fortress meter by meter. But that was not the humans' concern anymore. They had done what they came to do. In the shuttle's passenger bay, the 12 humans sat in exhausted silence. They were all injured. Blood stained their fatigues. Their weapons were empty or nearly so. But they were alive, and they had saved thousands of lives. Young Mi began treating wounds with the medical supplies on the shuttle. None of the injuries were immediately fatal, but all of them were painful. The humans accepted treatment without complaint, their faces calm despite the pain. Commander Hyo-jin was on another shuttle, being evacuated with the other wounded command staff. She watched the humans shuttle through her viewport and felt shame burning in her chest. They had come back. After everything she had said, after all the disrespect, they had come back and saved her life. The shuttle took them to a coalition medical ship. The 12 humans were taken to the medical bay for proper treatment. Coalition doctors examined them with shocked expressions. Injuries that would kill most species. Blood loss that should have caused unconsciousness. Pain that should have been incapacitating. Yet the humans had fought through all of it for 90 minutes. How are you even conscious? A Velthrim doctor asked Jin-soo while treating his broken arm. Because people needed help, Jin-soo replied simply. You do not stop because you hurt. You stop when the job is done. The doctor had no response to that. He finished treating the arm in silence, trying to understand these strange, stubborn beings. 3 days later, Daewon and his team were cleared to leave the medical ship. Their wounds were healing with a speed that surprised the alien doctors. Human bodies evolved on a death world recovered quickly from injuries. As they prepared to board a transport back to Earth, Commander Hyo-jin found them in the landing bay. She walked toward them slowly, her own injuries still visible beneath her uniform. Daewon saw her coming. He stopped and waited, his expression neutral. Hyo-jin stopped a few meters away. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she spoke, her voice quiet. I owe you an apology, she said. A real one. Not as a superior officer, but as someone who was catastrophically wrong. Daewon waited. I called you weak, Hyo-jin continued. I dismissed your achievements. I claimed your armor fought, not you. I said terrible things in front of everyone, and I did it because I believed them. She paused, struggling with the words. I was wrong about everything. You came back after I insulted you. You saved thousands of lives, including mine. You fought without armor, without enhancement, without any of the advantages I claimed you relied on, and you held the line that no one else could hold. Daewon's expression did not change. Are you finished? He asked quietly. No, Hyo-jin said. I need you to understand something. I have been a warrior my entire life. My people have been warriors for 5,000 years. We take pride in our martial tradition. When humans joined the coalition, we saw you as weak, as inferior. We could not understand how such fragile beings could be effective soldiers. She gestured at Daewon and his team. I understand now. You are not weak. You never were. You are something we had never encountered. Something that survived conditions we cannot imagine. Something that refuses to quit no matter how much pain you endure. Daewon was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice calm but firm. We do not wear armor to protect ourselves, Commander. We wear it to protect you from what we really are. Hyo-jin flinched as if struck. Those words. The same words he had spoken in the armory when he left. But now she understood them. Our world tried to kill us for millions of years, Daewon continued. Everything on Earth wanted to eat us, poison us, or tear us apart. We survived by becoming harder to kill than anything else, by refusing to give up, by hunting prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, by fighting through injuries that would stop any other species. He took a step closer. The armor makes us look like every other coalition soldier. It makes us look strong in ways you understand. But without it, you see what we really are. Pursuit predators from a death world, beings that evolved to never stop, never quit, never surrender. He paused, letting the words sink in. You called us weak because we lack natural weapons. But we do not need claws when we can craft better weapons.